Today, we are uncovering Allen Stanford's $8 billion Ponzi scheme. So here we go. Robert Allen Stanford, born March 24, 1950, is a convicted fraudster, former investor, and professional sports sponsor. He was convicted of fraud in 2012 for operating an $8 billion Ponzi scam and is currently serving a 110-year federal prison sentence. Stanford chaired the now-defunct Stanford Financial Group of companies. He is a fifth-generation Texan who previously lived in St. Croix, US Virgin Islands, and holds dual citizenship in Antigua and Barbuda, as well as the United States. He gave millions of dollars to politicians in Antigua, the United States, and various other nations. Stanford was the subject of several fraud investigations in early 2009, and on February 17, 2009, the Securities and Exchange Commission charged him with fraud and multiple violations of US securities laws for an alleged massive ongoing fraud involving $7 billion in certificates of deposit. The FBI raided Stanford's offices in Houston, Texas, Memphis, Tennessee, and Tupelo, Mississippi. The SEC revised its complaint on February 27, 2009, to refer to the alleged fraud as a massive Ponzi scheme. On June 18, 2009, he surrendered willingly to authorities. On March 6, 2012, Stanford was found guilty of all charges save one count of wire fraud. He is serving a 110-year term at the United States Penitentiary, Coleman II in Coleman, Florida. In September 2014, Stanford filed an appeal, which was denied in October 2015. Criminal activity includes convictions for Ponzi schemes and fraud. In early February 2009, states surfaced that the SEC, the FBI, the Florida Office of Financial Regulation, and the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, a major private sector oversight body in the United States, were investigating Stanford Financial Group, calling into question the constantly higher than market returns claimed by Stanford International Bank for its those who make deposits. A former executive told SEC officials that Stanford used hypothetical investment results as true historical data in sales calls to clients. Stanford stated that his certificates of deposits were as safe as or safer than US government-insured banks. On February 17, 2009, federal authorities raided Stanford Financial's headquarters, treating it as a kind of crime scene, cautioning people not to leave fingerprints. The SEC charged Stanford with massive ongoing fraud involving an $8 billion investment scheme. A US federal judge ordered Stanford to forfeit his passport and freeze his assets, as well as those of his enterprises, and place them in administration. According to CNBC, Stanford attempted to depart the country the same day when his headquarters were invaded. He called a private jet owner and tried to pay for a flight to Antigua using a credit card, but the organization only accepted wire transfers. On February 19th, acting on the SEC's request, FBI officers found Stanford at his girlfriend's residence outside Fredericksburg, Virginia, and served him with civil legal documents filed by the agency. The SEC frequently files civil charges prior to criminal charges being filed. Stanford was arrested on June 18, 2009. He handed over his passport to federal authorities and hired Brendan Sullivan, a criminal defense attorney who had previously represented Oliver North. Several governments took control of Stanford's business operations. On February 27, 2009, the SEC stated that Stanford and his collaborators ran a massive Ponzi scheme, abusing billions of dollars in investor funds and fabricating Stanford International Bank records to conceal their crime. Stanford International Bank's financial statements, including its investment income, are fictional, the Securities and Exchange Commission stated. Stanford denied any misconduct during an April 20th interview at the legal offices of Houston criminal attorney Dick DeGuerin. He said his companies were well run until the SEC disemboweled them. The FBI arrested Stanford on June 18, 2009. On June 25, 2009, he appeared in Houston court and pleaded not guilty to conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction. Stanford was admitted to the Regional Medical Center in Conroe, Texas, on August 27, 2009. He complained of a beating heart while being taken from a private jail in Huntsville, Texas, to the federal courthouse in Houston for a hearing on his counsel, Dick DeGuerin, who had requested permission to resign from Stanford's case. Robert Luskin, of Patton Boggs, who had previously represented Stanford in a civil lawsuit, was named lead counsel. On September 26, 2009, Stanford was hospitalized after being badly beaten by another prisoner at the Cornell Company's operated Joe Corley detention facility in Conroe. His injuries were categorized as non-life-threatening. Stanford's trial date was scheduled for January 2011. The district court determined that Stanford's anti-anxiety medicine use impairs his judgment, rendering him unable to stand trial. Stanford was jailed at the Federal Detention Center in Houston. In February 2011, Stanford filed a counterclaim for $7.2 billion in damages against the FBI and SEC. In May, prosecutors dropped 7 accusations against Stanford, leaving 14 allegations pending. The trial began on January 24, 2012, in the Houston Federal Courthouse, with Judge Hittner presiding. On March 6, after 3 hours of discussion, the jury found him guilty of masterminding a Ponzi scheme. Prosecutors demanded a sentence of 230 years in jail, the maximum allowed by law, and 80 years longer than Bernard Madoff's 150-year term, calling him a ruthless predator who lived a life steeped in deceit. Stanford's lawyers argued for a sentence of 31 to 44 months and a maximum of 10 years. The former penalty, with credit for time served, would have enabled him to be released without extra jail time. On June 14, 2012, Stanford was sentenced to 110 years in jail. Although it is less than half of the maximum punishment sought by prosecutors, it almost guarantees his death in jail. Hittner ordered Stanford to forfeit $5.9 billion, claiming that it engineered one of the most egregious frauds ever presented to a trial jury in federal court. Stanford testified for the initial time in court during the sentencing hearing, denying the notion that he has ever misled anyone. He blamed his company's downfall on Gestapo tactics used by regulators from the government. He is detained at Coleman II USP in Sumterville, Florida, and his earliest probable release date is March 13, 2103. On April 26, 2013, Federal District Judge David Godbey ruled in favor of the SEC in its civil complaint against Stanford, ordering him to disgorge $6.7 billion, $5.9 billion in illegal profits, plus $861 million in interest, and pay a $5.9 billion fine. He received a permanent ban from the securities industry. In September 2014, Stanford submitted a 299-page brief with the 5th United States Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans regarding his conviction. The appeal was dismissed in October 2015. That has brought us to the end of this video. Thanks for tuning in to another eye-opening episode on capital crimes, where we uncover the truth behind the dollars and cents. Before you go, fam, remember this: knowledge is power, and action is key. If you're as passionate about uncovering financial wrongdoing as we are, then don't forget to drop a comment below with your thoughts. Smash that subscribe button and share this video with the squad. Together, let's keep exposing the dark side of the financial world and keep chasing the truth.